Yeah, let's do that. We are live there. Let me record it here. All right, everyone. So, thank you once again for coming. And we are gonna go over the advanced portion of our Dynamo user group meeting here, and it will be about deploying Dynamo across your office, across your team, or just really making it easy for you to use. So some of the things that we are going to look at is the Dynamo Player, which is one very functional and useful out-of-the-box way to bring some democracy to your scripting workflows. We are also going to look at a Dynamo add-in, bet you didn't know there were any of those, called Dino. It lets you do some of the same things. And then we are going to look at a package that some of you may be familiar with. It's called Data Shapes, and it actually lets you create a user interface for your Dynamo graphs, which is pretty convenient. And then at the end, we're just going to do a quick live demo and take some questions. So first, we're going to look at the Dynamo Player. And when we were asking what versions people were using, there weren't very many. I think there was one person that was using 2018. So this would be an unfamiliar image to you, but the Dynamo Player in 2018 looks something like this. So at the very top, you have the name of your script, and in Revit 2018, it also, this isn't showing my cursor. That's fine. Here we go. It is also recognizing that inputs are needed, and it lets you control those inputs. So it lets you control the model inputs, and it lets you control the parameter inputs. And it also catches any watch nodes or outputs that you might care about, and it gives you feedback as soon as you've run the script. That's Revit 2018. Everyone's familiar with Revit 2017, and if you've opened up Dynamo Player in Revit 2017, it looks like this. And basically all it has is your script names and a play button to run them. But you can't control any of the inputs, you can't control the parameters. So if your script is something like these right here, where it's just as simple as one button and you're good to go, then it's great. But if you're doing something like Ifri was doing, where there might be some inputs that you need to be controlling, this is tough going. So in order to compensate for that, there's a couple of things that we have available to us. First one is Dino, which is an add-in for Dynamo. This is hyperlinked, and later when we upload the presentation, you can definitely click and check out their website, or you can Google it. It's made by a Russian BIM company called Prorybim. I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but it's an extension for Dynamo, extension for Revit. And in their words, it is used for organizing, deploying, and running Dynamo workspaces for Autodesk Revit, Autodesk Revit. So what does it do specifically? Oh, no, that's not what we want. Go to the next slide.
Everyone who needs the Wi-Fi, it's the microdisc G, and the very secure password is capital G guest 123 bang, or exclamation point.
All right, so what does Dino do? So the first thing it does is it installs this thing called a Dino Browser, and all it is basically a file explorer of sorts. You can point it to a directory where all your scripts are, and then it'll very neatly lay them out for you in an organized kind of fashion, and if you've grouped them or organized them in a way that's logical to you, you can then very quickly find what you need, especially if you have a very large script library. Or if you have a central repository on something like your, your firm's network. So the next thing it does is it allows you to control inputs and outputs, and it gives you some feedback. So the text is probably hard to make out here in the back, but all the green is basically things, parameters, selections that you can control. At the top here is a message. Once it runs, it'll tell you how many errors, warnings there were. And at the bottom, it will give you the starting time, how long it took to run, the ending time, and any outputs or watch nodes that you might have specified. It will also give you that. It also lets you sort of set some presets for your scripts. If there's a parameter or if there's a specific way that you'd like them to run, this adds another layer of that on top of your script, so that when somebody else runs it, there's settings that you need them to be working with. This is going to apply it automatically. Definitely more of an advanced feature. I personally have not used this one. I find other ways to control things of that nature. Now, my favorite part of Dino's functionality is that it lets you add things to the Revit ribbon. And I think it actually does it pretty intuitively, even if you're not very code-minded or computer-minded even. So the way that it works is these buttons that it will put in the Revit ribbon are controlled through a central text file. It's called buttons.txt. So that buttons file is going to be created as soon as you install Dino and as soon as you tell it where to look for scripts. So this is that same buttons file right here. And this is just the structure that I've created just to demonstrate how this works. So the tabs are controlled, again, through that central text file, the naming of the tabs rather. And the buttons are basically just the scripts that you've told it to put in the ribbon. So this is a button to instantly run your scripts, kind of like the Dynamo Player, except it's nice that it separates them out as a nice catalog, and you can browse them at the same time.
So this is part of Dynamo?
This is
This is not an add-in?
this is an add-in. Yep,
Say it again?
it's an add-in.
Called Dino.
Yeah, it's free. And then the very last thing you control is the naming of the tabs right here, or the naming of the categories rather. And that's just done through however your folders are structured. So the next thing we're going to look at is the data shapes package, which is a way to bring some interaction to your scripts, but this one is a bit more direct. So this is user interface functionality. So I'm going to click on this actually because this is very well documented. Mustafa's done a phenomenal job with this package and making it very easy to.
Well, that's pulling up. Does anyone have any other questions about Dino? So just to answer your other implied question, most Dynamo packages are free. Very few of them need to be paid for. Most of them are also open source. And if you go to the Dynamo Package Manager website, or the Dynamo Package website, they are frequently documented and listed there. They also rank packages.
Add-in is an add-in. It's not nothing to do with Dynamo.
Yeah, it's just an add-in. It's a separate thing.
Hell of a good idea.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So the data shapes website, like I said, very well documented. But if you were to go on here, and again, the presentation will be hyperlinked, so it should be pretty easy to find. There's essentially all kinds of different blocks here that he's written for letting the user input parameters, input selections, and letting them interact with the elements in a variety of ways. Here you can see there's checkboxes. You can do direct image inputs, all kinds of stuff. Let's go back here. Go. It has the ability to input images, drop downs, radio buttons, checkboxes, sliders, anything that you would have available to you in the Dynamo native workspace. Data shapes will let you do. So that is a short presentation, but now we're going to switch to the much more exciting part, which is going to be a demo of some of the stuff.
Capital
G, yes. 1, 2, 3, explanation.
My Revit's going to crash. It's perfect.
Live demo.
Hey.
Live demo first.
Okay. Stop that. Get it back up again. So for the demo, what we're going to try and do is first build a very, very simple script that would require some user inputs. We're going to run it in the native Dynamo workspace. We're going to see what that does for us. And then we're going to see a version of that script that is meant to be used with the Dino add-in. And we're going to see a version of that script that is meant to be used with the data shapes package, which is the user interface. And we'll see how differently those scripts have to be structured in order to get them to work.
Does the same one work with the player?
Yes, yeah, yep. And I will show you guys how that's done. Okay, let's see what it's doing. Bear with me here. Close this. Okay. Desktop. There we go. Okay. Let's see, new one right there. Okay. Manage. So not Dynamo here. Alrighty. So next time, of course, we're going to do our best to upload some of these source files and the graphs ahead of time. This time, we're going to try and upload them after this meeting. But we'll try and make sure that you guys have access to those as early as possible. Okay. So now, you don't have to recreate this here with me if you don't want, and we're probably a little short on time. So all this is going to be a script to create some slats between two lines. So I'm going to just run through this to explain how it works without recreating it from scratch. So we select two model elements. Those are going to be our top curve and our bottom curve. And then, like Ifri was saying, those have to get converted to a geometry that Revit and Dynamo are comfortable with. Then we're going to divide those curves however many times equally. And then we're basically going to connect the created points with a line. And then we are just going to extrude that line and thicken that surface. And those are going to be our slats. So let me visualize this here. So we have the bottom line. Know why it's struggling so much, guys. Sorry about that. I tested it earlier, but never like when you test it, is it? All right, so we have a bottom curve and a top curve, and the top curve I've given it a little bit of a wonky angle to help visualize this a little bit better. So let's get our dynamo. Let's pull it off to the side and make this a little smaller here. So we want to select a top curve, select a bottom curve. Just want to run it. Let's see what we get. Okay, so we got some slats here, and we can actually set this to automatic, and then if we, for example, if we played with the slider, which is the divisions, these get bigger and smaller, or not bigger and smaller, but they get, you know, denser, less dense. And of course, if we were to go here and mess with the physical properties at all, this would make them thicker, it would change their appearance, and so on and so forth. And for me personally, working in a home environment like this is great because it's the way I think. You know, I see the nodes, I see the wires, and it makes sense to me, but that's not the case for everyone. And some people, even though they might want to, for example, they might not have the time to interact with this kind of stuff at this level. So that's why we try to make it accessible with some other ways. So the first way we had discussed is the Dino add-in. So let me show you what the same script would look like if we are working with the Dino add-in. So while that's opening up, actually, I'm going to show you the Dino Browser. So I have a laptop here, so no benefit of dual monitors, but let me see if I can bring it out over here. So this is what the Dino Browser looks like, and it's kind of pixelated, but what I'm going to do here is go into Settings, and then this interface here is where you tell it what directory to look for in script. So if I had a central folder in my company's directory, that could be it. But for us right now, I'm going to tell it to look in the Philly Dynamo user group folder that I created with some scripts. And then here it shows the scripts that are in there, and it gives you the parameters that it's expecting as inputs. So how does it know what to expect as inputs? Let's check that out. So both in Dino and in Dynamo Player, at least Dynamo Player and Revit 2018, you have to be explicit about your inputs and about what it's using as an input. So if you right-click something like this, again, I know it's pixelated, but here there is a checkbox that says is input. So if that's checked, the Dynamo Player and Dino will be looking for this block as a block that needs user input. Now, there's also going to be some blocks, though, that you don't want it as user input. And if that's the case, you know, maybe it's just an annotation or something, you just have to be sure that when you create your graph, you go through the whole thing and you very critically think about what you want your users to control versus not control. So if you don't want them to control something, you would unclick that. Another very important part about Dino's parsing of inputs is the way you name things. So this node here, select model elements. So these two here are actually the same exact node, but this one has been renamed. And the way you rename them is you just double-click their names, and then you can name them to be whatever. But it's important because if you're looking at your Dino browser and if you haven't renamed them, you're going to have no idea what you're inputting where. So it's getting this nomenclature directly from what these blocks are called. So you got to be sure to set these to be exactly what you mean. So let's test out the Dino version. Let's minimize these guys here. All right. So let's say we didn't have the Dynamo Player. We just have the Dino add-in, and we have our browser here. So directly from the browser, we can hover over the inputs, and it'll make like a little gray box when you have the ability to interact with something. So top curve, I'm going to click, select that, select the bottom curve, click, select that, number of divisions, whatever, thickness, depth, and then to run it, I'm just going to make sure that this is, yep, it's set to manual. To run it, all you do is you just double click that, and it does it. Yeah, and the nice thing is that it does give you a runtime. It gives you some feedback, what kinds of errors, warnings, things like that. And then it gives you any other outputs that you might have specified. So if we look at this here, right at the very end, I had created some watch nodes just as a sample. Maybe we want to get the total area of all that material. Maybe we want to get the total volume. And maybe we have an idea of what that material costs or what it is. So maybe we want to get a material cost with this so that the designer is not only evaluating geometry, but they're also evaluating the design decision as a more holistic question rather than just looking at one aspect of it. And so the nice thing about Dino is that it'll print those there for you just at the end of this whole array. So you don't have to go looking through your graph for your watch nodes. And they might be neatly organized, they might be very easy to find, but I just feel like this is almost always easier to find.
Do you have to do something on the watch nodes, like right click?
That's a very, very good question, actually. So no, you don't. As a matter of fact, there's, yeah, so if you rename them, it's gonna show them to you. If this was just, the default, it's not gonna show